Classic Skyblock, the most popular, most downloaded, most iconic map ever created for Minecraft Java Edition. You spawn on a small grassy floating island with nothing but a tree, some dirt, ice, and lava. From these materials, you have to survive. It's not easy, and it certainly takes all your knowledge of the game to progress further into this world. I wondered what would happen if I were to play the classic Skyblock, but in hardcore mode. If I die once, it's over. So I did. Over the course of 2 weeks, I spent 100 days on this Skyblock world. Loading up the world for the first time, nostalgia hit me like a truck. Skyblock used to be my main game mode back in my youth, so I was pretty good at the general idea. This was different though. One mess up was all it would take. One little slip. So I had to be extremely cautious. With this in mind, I began by setting up the cobblestone generator, a rudimentary machine that would allow me to expand my island quickly. In order to make anything with a stone, I required the wood of the only tree in the world. I quickly placed dirt around the tree so that I would catch the saplings, and used the first bit of my wood to make 8 sticks and a crafting table. I placed the crafting table behind the cobblestone, so that if I wanted to, I could just hold down left click with a pickaxe without having to worry about breaking blocks behind it. It was AFKable. My first use of the cobblestone was to create an axe, a sword, and pickaxe, along with some cobblestone walls that would make it nearly impossible for me to accidentally walk off. I then crafted my first shovel in order to quickly collect the dirt. I had a plan for this water that would span over the entire 100 days, so I began to let it fall. I spent the rest of that day and night grinding the cobblestone generator and obtaining large amounts of cobblestone. Using my water, I began construction of a small slab platform that I would use to safely collect my limited supply of dirt. In total, there are only 81 pieces of dirt in the entire world, so losing any was very taxing. Once the platform was done, I returned to see that my sapling had regrown, and with the wood I collected, I crafted an item that would very quickly become my best friend for the early game, the composter. The composter would be used to eventually gather bone meal, which I would use later on. I began expanding my platform with slabs, putting more pressure on my shift key than ever before. I worked deep into the night, expanding outward and planning ahead. I made a dirt platform that would be used for seed collection once the time came. I made the area safe with cobblestone walls and smelted logs to create charcoal, an alternative to coal that could be used for torches. As day 3 approached, I gathered the rest of the dirt that I could for now and began planning for the future. Day 3. The task wall was something I would find very helpful. I populated it with various tasks and a few long-term goals. I then began slowly and meticulously bridging out to the second island, which held 27 sand, 3 cactus, and a chest, which upon opening revealed a single melon, 1 pumpkin seed, and 10 obsidian. Oh, that's how we get to the Nether! I actually had no idea. I then had a little fun. While bridging over, I had used my water to create a huge pool, with the purpose of catching me in the event of tripping off the island. I was determined not to die to the void. I managed to link this waterfall to my main water source, celebrating loudly when the water remained where it was. Let's go! I spent the rest of the night collecting more resources until sunrise, but I could already feel the effects of insomnia creeping in. Since someone had to build this map, my day cycle didn't actually start at day 0 but day 13, so that meant I would be playing until I reached day 113 in order for it to be technically 100 days. More cobble was collected, more expansion took place, and new tasks were added. I began expanding upwards to what would eventually become my farming area, starting off with the cactus farm. I eventually would want room for carrots, potatoes, and wheat, but for that I would need water. I began pillaring upwards to begin the start of a basic aqueduct, which would allow 1 water source to be used widely across my entire world. Using slabs, I created pathways for the water to flow and fall, guiding it to where I wanted to grow my crops. After collecting more cobblestone, I finished up the farm foundations and said hello to a massive tree that decided to get in my way. Once all the dirt was placed, I was ready to move my water. I needed to act quickly or else my water pool below the island would vanish. For some reason I don't have anything written down for day 6. Weird. I spent the rest of the day farming cobblestone, preparing for more island expansion, which included a railway across the slab bridge I had constructed out to the desert island. As the night fell, I began going a little crazy as I had not slept at all yet due to my lack of a comfy mattress. My insomnia got the best of me, and the next thing I knew, phantoms were dominating the skies. Oh no! Oh god! Come on! Oh, they missed. Yeah, die! Yes, let's go! Yeah! Oh! Phantoms! And I knew I had to start dealing with the sleep issue right away. For the remainder of that day, I built a makeshift house underneath the cactus farm as a means to protect me from the phantoms. This construction took me into day 8. I began construction of a tiny mob spawning pad in hopes that it would spawn spiders to grant me string. 4 string could create a single block of wool, so I would need 12 string if I wished to sleep. That night I encountered more phantoms after a long session of cobblestone grinding. The spawning pad didn't work at all, so I had to reconsider my design. Nearing the end of the night, I obtained enough saplings to acquire my first ever piece of bone meal. More island expansion. It was imperative to expand a lot early so that I would have room for all the things I would want to create once I got the resources. Once again, my lack of sleep caused me great pain. I needed to deal with this. After removing some torches on the desert island platform, I gathered my first string. I collected 2 more over the night and stupidly created a fishing rod that wouldn't actually function until much later, if at all. A 10th of the way to 100. I began by expanding the original spawning pad by a single block in the hopes of increasing the chances of spider spawns. That night, phantoms again. After witnessing a slight flaw with our spawning pad, I went up once again to fix said flaw by giving the mobs more blocks to pathfind to. During that night, I added walls and a 1 block high ceiling to the desert island platform in hopes of spawning specifically spiders. However, it ended up just spawning bats. Once again, as was becoming daily, I was attacked by phantoms due to my lack of sleep. Day 12 to 13 were spent grinding resources and slowly accumulating string. It took many nights, but finally I had gathered enough to finally rest my head. From days 14 to 17, I began my first major structure, the Ethos Lab Darkroom Mob Spawner. In order to make the spawner, you need 8 water sources, but since I only had 1, it was time to get a little creative. I brought the water source up to a higher altitude in preparation for the height of the structure. I didn't have enough cobblestone to make it, but thankfully I had more than enough wood, so I got to work. Once the main structure was complete, all that was left was to manipulate my single water source to spread even further, building an elaborate system of pathways for the water to flow across. During the day, light would slip its way through the water and slow down the spawn rates. So throughout day 17, I added a cover above the water so that the light levels in the spawner were 7 or below, which was the light level required for mobs to spawn. The spawner began to work a few moments later, and finally we had another source of bone meal other than the meticulous and very inefficient composter. It was still my friend though. Now with the spawner done, it was time to move on to other tasks, the rate of which they were completed exponentially speeding up as my nervousness began to diminish and my resources began to accumulate, both of which increased efficiency and determination to get tasks done. Over time my levels slowly increased, and with no way to use them, they only stood as a representation of my power and my progress. Day 19 was a day of expansion of my farm, prepping an area for my aqueduct to saturate more of my limited farmland. Using the bones collected from the new spawner, I would be able to grow these new crops immediately. During grinding, I managed to save a chicken, but he sadly despawned quickly due to his status as a baby zombie jockey. Sadness. Day 20 was the day where everything changed. Remembering a rather recently added Minecraft feature, I put my knowledge to the test. Oh! We achieved a second source of water. And so the days went by. Progress became steady and sessions went by quickly. While writing this script, I quickly realized that if I am to derive this tale more effectively, I would need to only focus on the notable aspects of each session. Day 21 to 26 brought forth the construction of a spider farm neighboring the main darkroom. It wasn't super efficient, but it would be a long time before I needed string. Day 22 delivered my first iron ingot, dropped from a zombie. I used this ingot to create a stone cutter, which would allow me to conserve on stone materials that I would frequently use over the coming weeks. Also, the Nether portal was made. Day 26 to 28 saw the construction of a storage room. Well, really just an open platform for my items. I correctly guessed that having multiple mob drop chests would come handy in the future. Also, this happened. What the hell? So, as I was heading up to remove the water streams that I had created earlier in the grinder to replace it with 8 actual water sources, I saw a sight that reminded me, hey, creepers can swim. Day 33 was the day of the Nether. Gathering my balls and my wits, I strode to the portal completely unaware of what I would find in there. The first thing I discovered was an island of glowstone, but the second thing I discovered was much more scary. The portal was weird. It was so old, it was legitimately unstable. Having never seen anyone ever get to the Nether on Skyblock, I had no idea what would be in the chest. What I found slightly undermined my previous achievement of getting a second water source, but based on that I decided not to ever use this ice block because of said achievement. Birchwood would grant some variety, and sugarcane would be used for future endeavors. Once I learned how unstable the portal was by almost trapping myself in the Nether, I quickly returned to the overworld to gather my lava source. Bringing it back, I destroyed the unstable portal and remade it using wood and fire. The Nether was not what I expected, but it was a Nether waste biome, meaning that piglin could spawn along with their zombified counterparts. This would come in handy later. From that point on until day 37, I remodeled the spider farm to host both spiders and creepers. Not being an expert on mob spawning patterns, it was all merely an experiment to see if more spiders would spawn with more room above their heads. However, I did not really see a difference. From day 38 to 42, the slow construction of a basic house was made. Due to my lack of materials and fear of the void, this house would be below average. I did find a use for the large amounts of bones that we had been slowly building up. Bone blocks. Being a nice contrast from all the woods I was using, I decided to make it my ceiling and the walls on my second floor to give it the classical medieval look. Back to the Nether, it was gold farm time. My lack of resources and fear of death made the structure of this farm extremely rudimentary, but since they literally couldn't spawn anywhere else, the farm worked pretty well for its size. I brought hay bales along with me to attempt to catch a piglin for trading purposes. If I could trade with piglin, that would be huge. Their trades would deliver me materials otherwise impossible to obtain, like quartz, soul sand, potions, glass bottles, gravel, nether bricks, obsidian, and leather. There's probably more there, but I forgot. But the two trades I was most interested in were the iron nuggets and the string, since I was heavily lacking in both categories. I figured that a way for the spawner to work faster was to anger the zombie pigmen, so they would all foolishly fall to their demise. However, this action nearly caused my own demise, due to my lack of memory of the ability of these piggies. Oh my god! No! They were kamikaze masters. This revelation forced me to flee the Nether ASAP. One of my major goals for this world was to obtain every obtainable music disc. I could not get Pigstep, but every other disc was perfectly fine. If a creeper is killed by a skeleton, it drops a music disc. I began by creating another elaborate system of aqueducts and mob funnels, but I quickly realized that these were almost practically useless. My original plan was to catch creepers falling from the spider/creeper farm, but while making the system to let that happen, I realized I could just make a skeleton shoot the mobs inside of the mob grinder. Within just a few days of starting this project, I had gathered every single music disc using the same skeleton. And a few extra discs. Quite a few extra discs. From that point on until day 51, I sat at the gold farm slowly gathering nuggets. I was becoming more powerful by the second. Sadly, I realized I can never ever listen to the music discs I had acquired, because for some reason, jukeboxes required diamonds, and I couldn't get them. Days 51 to 58 saw the slow and steady process of getting villagers and trading with them. The casual Minecraft player may think that getting villagers on Skyblock would be impossible due to the lack of blazes and brewing stands, but I knew otherwise. Putting the mob funnel back to use, I waited until I had two things in the spawner: a zombie villager and a witch. Witches have a chance to splash the player with 4 different types of potions: poison, slowness, harming, and weakness. The gold farm had provided enough gold for 2 golden apples, so I had all the ingredients I needed to cure the damned souls. But doing this was no easy task, and it nearly led to my death several times, the poison bringing me down to half a heart rather frequently. The chance of a witch to splash weakness is 25%, but only when you are within 3 blocks of her, so I would need to take the full force of all the other potions, which could sometimes deal 3 hearts at a time if it was a harming potion. I probably went through half of my food supply trying to get the weakness potion to be thrown. Finally, after what seemed like hours, I succeeded. The second villager came shortly after, and with 2 villagers, you can make as many as you wanted. Let me take a break and tell you guys why villagers were a game changer. Certain villagers gave certain trades. For starters, I created a farmer using my beloved composter, and a toolsmith using a smithing table. With my bone meal supply, I farmed emeralds from the farmer, who gave me better deals due to being cured, and I slowly unlocked different trades from the toolsmith. Up to this point, just over halfway done, I had been stuck using the standard stone tools. The villagers would change that. The toolsmith's journeyman tier gave me enchanted iron pickaxes for 1 emerald each, and the top tiers gave me enchanted diamond tools. If you repeat this process for weaponsmiths and armorers, you would get a similar result, which is precisely what I did from day 59 to 65. After making the villagers frick, I began gathering diamond gear from the armorer. His final 2 tiers were the ones that gave it, but on that journey to the max tier, I also obtained full iron, even though it was just for a moment. 18 minutes after getting full iron, I had full diamond, enchanted with the simple but very useful projectile protection. And on my boots, feather falling 3, which was huge. Also, on day 65, I noticed how close I was to reaching another goal of mine. After a few more minutes at the mob grinder, I finally reached level 100. With our new tools, I took some time to simply gather resources. I needed lots of wood for plans to expand the gold farm, and cobble is always a nice thing to have an abundance of. From day 69 to 75, it was gold farm time. Heading back into the Nether, I expanded the gold farm platforms, which were previously 6 blocks across, to 20 blocks. Once completed, I farmed it, whilst trying to capture a piglin to trade with via the use of hay bale. Once a piglin was saved, which was actually much harder than I expected, I trapped him in a corner and began the process of feeding him gold. After a while, I was ready to start another project that would make farming cobblestone much more interesting. I knew it was time to bring out an old design I used to use way back in my youth when I played on Skyblock servers. On days 75 to 80, the construction of the Pillars of Creation began. Unfortunately, it could only be one pillar due to my shortage of redstone, which I had managed to actually gather from witches, but in the end I managed to actually create something from my limited supply. I didn't have an easy way to activate my machine, but fortunately, tripwire hooks create a redstone pulse without the use of redstone. Yeah, look at that! It's a thing that we made with 3 redstone. From that point on to day 80, I began cleaning up my island a bit. Starting with removing the previous cobblestone generator, cleaning up the roof of my mob spawner, clearing away the old unused aqueducts, and getting the area ready for the next major project, which would take up the rest of my days, the iron golem farm. Now that we had villagers, we could begin to start farming iron at an insane rate. Back in the day, iron farms required stacks upon stacks of blocks, and were huge behemoths up in the sky. Nowadays, they require a little more than half an inventory of different easily obtainable materials. I wanted to position the golem farm at the direct center of our world, to have the golems die on the single piece of bedrock that all Skyblock worlds had. Unfortunately, this meant I had to actually demolish part of my mob spawner to make room for the golems to fall down, but I decided it was worth it. Oh, the farm actually looks really weird now. Of course, I couldn't build the golem farm without the actual materials to make it, so I began gathering the blocks I needed to create it, which brought me into a problem. Despite the spider farm running for the entire session, producing string, it didn't actually have enough to make the wool to make the 6 beds that the style of farm I was making needed. So I returned to the Nether once more, and began farming piglin trays until I had enough. Day 80 to 84, the farm was under construction. I wanted to begin modernizing my builds, so I made several stacks of smooth stone and built the farm out of the new blocks. I built a tower that would keep the golems all in the same place, and at the top of that tower, I began to work on the actual farm itself. The design I was doing was Doc M77's famous iron farm, a farm I had built dozens of times in the past. The next challenge was to make a water elevator / funnel to transport villagers into the farm. For this farm to be most efficient, you needed 6 villagers. So whilst my current villagers were breeding, I built a soul sand water tower to the same altitude as the farm, and using signs, I created a water pathway that would lead the villagers straight into their new homes. I boarded off a section in the house, which would specifically hold my new villagers until they became adults. Once that was done, I began the ultra tedious task of filling the tower with water. This took way too long. The days were dwindling down, so I needed to work fast. I camped at the gold farm until I had enough strength for all the beds I would need for this, which was 6, but I actually made 9 so that I could use the 3 extra beds for breeding more villagers. The reason this took 6 days is because A, the string trade for piglins was rare, and I needed a lot of string, and B, villagers take 20 minutes to turn into adults once they're born, and if I had sent them up as children, they likely would have fallen to their deaths or drowned. But by day 90, 2 out of the 6 villagers were in the farm. Day 90 to 91 was just me gathering resources. Resources are cool. Day 91 to, I'm guessing 96. The reason I say I'm guessing was because this recording session was interesting. I wasn't aware of it until I checked what was wrong with my recording software, but when I looked at my hard drive, it had less than 100 megabytes left of free space. I don't even remember what I did in this recording, but considering it's only 30 minutes long, along with the fact that my next recording after I cleared my hard drive started at day 96, I'm pretty sure I ran out of hard drive space whilst recording this session. What I can assume happened was that I used the lava source to spread to the golem farm, creating a killing chamber for the Iron Men. I then proceeded to move the last 4 villagers into the farm. I also remembered not losing any villagers, so that was good. The reason I didn't notice that the hard drive was full was because this was the first time in my 10 years of gaming that I had ever maxed out a hard drive. First time for everything, I guess. Kinda sucks I lost this footage, but at least you saw me get 2 of the villagers up there. While waiting for my last 4 villagers to breed, I started to make the area around the iron farm look nice, as I would be expanding from that in the future. Lastly, I made a water elevator hooked up to my mob grinder for a zombie to get pushed up into the iron farm. After discovering my filled hard drive and removing things from it, it was time to get the zombie. This proved to be the most difficult part. Not necessarily because the zombies are hostile, but because I needed one that wouldn't despawn. I hadn't fished at all, so I didn't have any name tags to keep the zombies from despawning. Thankfully, there are zombies that don't despawn. If a zombie can hold an item, he will not despawn due to the fact that the item it's holding could have belonged to a player. Like a sword, for example. The funnest part of this task for me was actually transporting the zombie, because I would get to make use of a Minecraft feature most didn't know about. That was cobblestone walls being able to push mobs up while still having water flowing over them. This was useful, because with the water elevator I made for the zombie, it pushed him slightly to the side before sending it up. I hooked this elevator to the mob farm, blocked off by a door, so that if a zombie did spawn with an item, I could go up, kill all the other mobs, and not have to worry if another mob had wandered into the elevator by mistake. Sooner than expected, I returned to find a zombie holding the flesh of its brethren. He was perfect. Luring him to the elevator, I gave him a shove and he was on his way. I used iron collected from the piglin trades to craft a cauldron, which I then placed under his feet so that the villagers and zombies could make eye contact, which was crucial for the farm to work. The cauldron, along with a trapdoor above him, prevented him from escaping due to hitboxes. Yeah, sorry if that was a little complicated. But finally, we had a steady source of iron. Sometimes I think I'll even spawn 2 at a time. Unfortunately, I ran into a problem. No! He killed the zombie. Oh my god! Damn it. But that didn't matter right now. The final stretch. Unfortunately, since our zombie died, I spent the rest of my 100 days getting a new one. But once again, somehow this one disappeared as well. But thankfully, from those 2 zombies, we got enough iron to make an anvil, which I could use to finally get rid of some of my levels. Feather Falling 4. Even though we never actually successfully made the iron farm last long, I still succeeded in creating it, so I didn't let it demotivate me. On the final day, I took one last glance at what I had accomplished. Starting from a stack of dirt, 1 tree, and a single source of water and lava. All of this was created. Skyblock is definitely one of the hardest challenges in Minecraft, especially in hardcore mode. If you haven't played Skyblock before, I highly recommend it. And if you have played Skyblock before, try it out with hardcore mode. All you need is an NBT editor to change your game mode to hardcore. Anyways, that's just about it for this 100 days. Should I do another one? Leave a comment down below if you enjoyed this one. Make sure to hit the like button as well, and subscribe if you have not. I hope you enjoyed this one, my friends. And we'll see you for the next 100 days.